When you're the son of a famous professional wrestler, some would argue that it's harder for you to make a name for yourself based on your own merits. Not in the case of Barry Windham, though. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tyler Vance Rants. I am your host, Tyler Vance himself. It is August 4th, 1984. Last week, Brian Adidas reminded us once again as to why he does not like Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, while also making veiled threats towards that man. Tully Blanchard successfully defended his NWA Television Championship and his own $10,000 against Bret Hart. And the Boogie Woogie Maniac Jimmy Valiant accepted Assassin No. 1's Taped Fist Challenge. In the World Wrestling Federation, Jesse the Body Ventura outsmarted the Polish power Ivan Putski when it came to their arm wrestling competition. And speaking of the WWF, we're going to be tuning into its flagship show, Championship Wrestling First this week, where Vince McMahon and Tony Garea are once again on commentary. The first match of the night that they'll be calling is a singles match between Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff taking on Salvatore Bellomo one-on-one.
Orndorff now, I would suspect, would have problems, maybe a lot of problems in figuring out the skills of Salvatore Bellomo.
I would suspect what you just said is a load of crap, Vince. What's there to figure out? I'm surprised Paul Orndorff didn't just come down to the ring with a bowl of spaghetti to distract Mr. Italy and get the easiest win of his career. The crowd riles Paul Orndorff up as the match officially gets underway, and that leads to Mr. Wonderful making a couple of mistakes once the match begins. Mistakes that Mr. Italy Salvatore Bellomo capitalizes on, but with nothing more than very basic moves such as a headlock or perhaps a hip toss. Now I know why McMahon said that Bellomo would be hard to figure out. It's because he doesn't have any skill at all. Paul Orndorff gets infuriated with his Italian opponent, so he throws him outside of the ring, following him, and then slams Bellomo hard on the concrete floor. From there, it's all Orndorff, and Mr. Wonderful unleashes on Mr. Italy, winning with a simple falling elbow. I think he figured it out, Vince. Brian Blair takes on Greg the Hammer Valentine in singles competition next, while Blair's former tag team partner Garea, Tony Garea, sounds like he's falling asleep on commentary.
That sour look on his face most of the time. Vince, he's kind of head scissors and kick out by Brian Blair.
Both men begin the match with a feeling out progress before Brian Blair is able to body slam the Hammer before going to work on Valentine's shoulder. Valentine comes back and he begins to go to work on Brian's own shoulder, giving him a taste of his own medicine. Moments later, Blair tries to spear the Hammer, but misses, and instead only flies through the ring ropes and down onto the floor below. Greg Valentine then tries to suplex Brian Blair back into the ring, but it is reversed into a small package, which itself is reversed into another small package, which allows Greg the Hammer Valentine to get the 1, 2, 3. This week's Piper's Pit is short and sweet. Rowdy Roddy Piper vows to get the new WWF Women's Champion Wendy Richter onto Piper's Pit next week, and vows to expose the sham victory that it is. Come hell or high water, Roddy Piper vows to get not only the Women's Championship returned to the Fabulous Moolah, but also have her dignity returned to her as well. Truly, Hot Rod is a hero of his time. The main event of WWF Championship Wrestling sees the brother of the Boogie Woogie Maniac, Jimmy Valiant, Gentleman Jerry Valiant, take on the WWF World Heavyweight Champion, Hulk Hogan. The most effective maneuver that the gentleman is able to employ against Hogan is a nerve pinch. And unsurprisingly, Hogan shrugs this off and wins shortly thereafter with an atomic leg drop. With a very lackluster outing from the World Wrestling Federation, let's tune into the National Wrestling Alliance and its flagship show, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, and hope for a little bit more of an exciting experience. Bob Caudle greets us on commentary, and thankfully he won't be putting us to sleep or sound like he's falling asleep, as he brings us a match between Rufus R. Freight Train Jones and Doug Vines. For some reason, Jones comes down to the ring wearing a crown on his head, and Caudle even calls him
You see the King, Rufus R. Freight Train Jones.
King of what exactly? Stupidity? Try as he might, Doug Vines' offense has little to no effect on the Freight Train, who walks away with a headbutt victory. Backstage, Bob Caudle has NWA Television Champion Tully Blanchard with him, who says that due to the fact he's defended his championship 2 weeks in a row against the likes of Bret Hart and Sam Houston, he will no longer be putting that championship up until someone of quality and of note comes out of the wings to challenge him. To make up for this, Tully Blanchard will once more be gracing us by providing color commentary. The first match that Tully Blanchard's wonderful voice will grace us with calling is a singles match between Nikita Koloff, who is accompanied by his uncle Ivan, as well as the Pride of the Carolinas, Don Kernodle, taking on one of the men that Blanchard himself just recently beat, Sam Houston. Koloff starts the match off by throwing Sam around the ring like yesterday's garbage. Houston then continues on to play the role of victim in Koloff's display of power, losing hard to a reverse backbreaker. Next up sees Gary Royal take on the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. Once the match starts, Rhodes does his best Rufus R. Jones impersonation as he moves around the ring as if his bones had just liquefied. Despite looking like a moron, Dusty Rhodes is able to win in less than a minute following an elbow drop. Backstage once again, Bob Caudle this time has Mr. Personality himself, Brian Adidas, along with Pistol Pez Whatley standing by for an interview. Adidas reminds us again of the issues and grievances that he currently has with Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, before he moves on to the Chief Wahoo McDaniel debacle, saying that the Chief and his actions of late are motivated by money.
What about Wahoo, Brian?
I don't know. I think it's something that just shows you what money can do to a man.
Bro, what are you talking about? The Chief has stated time and time again that he is tired of being a victim of racism and also having his so-called friends use and abuse him. Either get a clue or shut the hell up. Pez Whatley then jumps in and says that if there does end up being a tournament to crown the next NWA United States Heavyweight Champion, his name is definitely going to be added to the list one way or another. Vinnie Valentino and Keith Larsen have the task of taking on the Assassins #1 and #3 in tag team competition next. Surprisingly, Assassin #3 struggles against his opponents and often gets caught and double teamed by them. Ringside, Paul Jones is standing by, and it is his instructions that prevent Assassin #3 from losing the effort for his team catastrophically. Once tagged in, Assassin #1's taped fist is enough to get the 1-2-3 for his team. Once more, Bob Caudle is backstage, and he's once again speaking to Tully Blanchard, informing the NWA Television Champion that none other than the American Dream Dusty Rhodes has laid out a challenge for the Color Commentators Championship. There is a condition, however. Apparently, the already generous 20-minute time limit is not enough for the American Dream. Instead, he wants the time limit upped to 60 minutes. And despite the fact that myself and Tully Blanchard don't believe that Dusty Rhodes has it in him to go for a full hour, Blanchard accepts anyways because that's just the kind of champion that he is. Chief Wahoo McDaniel then emerges, and Bob Caudle then asks him what's gotten into him.
What has really happened to Wahoo McDaniel?
Why are people choosing to ignore the words that Chief McDaniel is saying? He is a victim of racism. He is tired of being taken advantage of. Open your ears! Chief McDaniel then reaffirms that while he understands that the Nature Boy Ric Flair has a busy schedule being the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Once Rick is back in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, the Chief will be gunning for his World Heavyweight Championship and guarantees that the Chief will walk away as the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion. All of you old-timers out there that speak at me as if I'm not allowed to watch this old wrestling stuff might remember a name called Blackjack Mulligan. He made a name for himself all throughout the National Wrestling Alliance by teaming with his partner, Blackjack Lanza, forming the Blackjacks. They earned accolade after accolade and cemented their legacy as one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Gordon Solie has Blackjack Mulligan's son, Barry Windham, standing by, who mentions that he is currently in negotiations with Jim Crockett Promotions to become the newest member of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling's roster. This is huge. Barry Windham is one of the rare cases where the son surpasses the father. In-ring skill, charisma, you name it, Barry Windham has got it. I, for one, am going to be on the edge of my seat until it's confirmed whether or not Jim Crockett Jr. can secure this deal, and if not, what an idiot. Chief Wahoo McDaniel takes on Bret Hart in singles competition next. Chief McDaniel's frustrations with both the NWA and the fact that nobody around the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling area seems to be taking what he says seriously translates into pure aggression as soon as the match begins, and he throws Hart through the ropes. Bob Caudle immediately calls for a disqualification at this point, but thankfully we have Tully Blanchard on color commentary to correct his mistake. Or should I call it bias at this point?
Right there, Tully, and whoa, over the top rope. He slung him over the top rope. What the referee's going to do about that?
The top rope.
Now, referee.
Bob Cully went right between the ropes.
Once back in the ring, Chief Wahoo McDaniel continues his dominance over Bret Hart, and it's not long before he secures the win following a catapult suplex. Gary Cordonelli and some other loser then rush the ring and try to attack the Chief for no reason. I want these two clowns fined and suspended. This is getting outrageous. The next guests to be interviewed backstage by Bob Caudle are Paul Jones and Assassin Number 1. Jones is in a great mood and says that he can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to his war with the Boogie Woogie Maniac Jimmy Valiant and his circus of clowns. Assassin Number 1 then leaps off at this point and says that if Valiant or any of his other goof friends try to take out Paul Jones prior to the tape fist match, they will have to go through Assassin Number 1 first.
Here he is, but I'm the obstacle in the way if you want Jones, daddy.
Mr. Personality Brian Adidas finally has an opportunity to put his money where his mouth is, as he and Pistol Pez Whatley tag team together against Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer and Jesse Barr. Adidas does manage to get an early cross body and a near fall on Sawyer before both men then tag in their respective partners. The Pistol once more demonstrates amazing athletic ability and he dominates Barr with a series of drop kicks. He then goes on to outsmart the Mad Dog, who does not have his manager Paul Jones to fill in that intellectual gap. The match then develops into somewhat of a stalemate as each team tries to get one over on another. A knee from Buzz Sawyer hits Pistol Pez Whatley in the face, causing the Pistol's nose to begin gushing blood. This causes Brian Adidas to get tagged back in for his team, and no longer wishing to engage with the running shoe, Buzz Sawyer tags in Jesse Barr to do the honors. Adidas manages to roll Barr up, and despite the fact that Jesse Barr does in fact get his shoulder up, the referee still counts to 3. Once again, the corruption in the NWA rears its ugly, Jim Crockett Jr. looking head. To end the show, Bob Caudle interviews the Pride of the Carolinas, Don Kernodle, the Russian Bear Ivan Koloff, and his nephew, Nikita Koloff. Due to Caudle's recent bias and unprofessional behavior, especially when it comes to Chief Wahoo McDaniel, Don Kernodle says that Caudle is no longer good enough to interview the three of them, and so he takes the microphone from the man and hands it over to Ivan Koloff.
But I really don't think you're good enough to be out here with Koloff and Kernodle.
The Russian Bear says that it is the trio's pride and skill that have made them the men that they are today, as well as what has helped them secure accolade upon accolade. To emphasize this, Don Kernodle is then awarded a medal from the government of the Soviet Union itself as Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling and the week comes to an end. While a lackluster week in the WWF, except for Piper's Pit with Rowdy Roddy Piper promising to expose the sham victory that Wendy Richter had over the Fabulous Moolah, the very opposite could be said for the National Wrestling Alliance and Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, has challenged NWA Television Champion Tully Blanchard, with a stipulation that instead of just the gifted 20 minutes that Blanchard had already set, instead the match will be set at 60 minutes. The corruption and the bias have gotten so bad that officials in the NWA just continue to run rampant and make whatever decisions they seemingly want to. Despite all this, Jim Crockett Jr. himself is in negotiations to sign a very gifted wrestler. Barry Windham debuted in the world of professional wrestling at just the age of 19 and quickly won over crowds with not only his natural charisma, but his in-ring ability as well. If the negotiations go smoothly and that greedy Crockett doesn't try to screw the young man over, we the fans are in for one hell of a treat. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Tyler Vance Rants. Don't forget to like the video, hit the bell, and subscribe so you never miss when a new episode is released. You can also follow me on social media, where you'll find plenty of fun, funny, and fantastic wrestling stuff for you to check out. As well, I would appreciate it if you'd share the video with your family and friends. That's it for me for now. I will see you next week. So long. Tully Blanchard with him. I will do that again because I paused. Only Paul Jones's ring where the son surpasses the father.